Welcome back to Red Dusk. I'm your host, the one and only Mount Crusade. Today we're playing as the USSR. Last time we played this mod, we played as Saddam Hussein's Iraq. So the path I want to go down is Putin. It has been 83 years since the Aurora fired on the Winter Palace, signaling the beginning of the Soviet era, and it's been 9 years since it almost ended. Catastrophe of the Soviet stagnation for the past 20 years culminated in Gorbachev's failed leadership, in turn created an even bigger reaction. That was the August coup of 1991. The fate of the Soviet Union hanged on in the balance as leadership of the GKCHP stopped it from falling over the edge. But now, 9 years later, the situation is no better, except now there are no more Yeltsins or Gorbachevs to take the blame. The status of the Soviet Union. We will have to reassess the state of the Soviet Union now that we are back in control. We need a full report of all departments in the economy, including a report of where our enemies of the state now are. The specter of militarism. Marshal of the Soviet Union, General Dmitry Yazov, who has been leading the militarist faction of the party and is rising in influence, capitalizing on the reclamation of the Balkans and Kazakh. Yazov is pushing for the increased funding of the army even higher than its current levels. It has also come to the point where we need to acknowledge this rising star. Dissidence has always been a problem in our country ever since the Great October Socialist Revolution, but in this period of perennial crisis, the dissidence has become one of our greatest problems of our country, especially in our new generations that have become weary of the Communist Party and are looking for alternatives. And the situation in the Baltics hasn't made things any better. If we want communism to survive, we need to deal with the dissidence problem as soon as possible. Yev's final weeks. Everyone knows Grenady. Yeniyev's days as chairman of the Soviet Union are numbered, especially after failing to deliver the prosperity and peace he promised to the people after the coup in 1991. But he will not go out without a fight, or before the inevitable or worse happens. Our chairman will do one last attempt at improving the situation, that of the motherland, but whether he succeeds in his attempt or not is a whole different story. Administrative reforms. While our economic situation is mediocre, to put it mildly, the situation in the halls of power isn't better by any means. With rampaging corruption among the party and a suffocating bureaucracy, and a party more focused on bickering rather than finding a solution to our problems. But fortunately, Chairman Yevnov has had enough and will implement new reforms, so all these problems will be no longer in the Soviet Union in the future. Kryakov. As the Union enters the new millennium, we also need advice from our elders on how we should continue to lead the country into the future. Vladimir Kiryov, a very important ally in the 91 coup by leading the KGB into successfully arresting Gorbachev and the killing of Yeltsin. Kirkov led the KGB officially until his retirement, monitored by the KGB's and mentored the KGB's rising star and current leader Vladimir Putin. Although he is retired from politics, it is wise to get advice from him on the current situations. Make concessions. Further look into the administration shows that a lot of factions feel sidelined after the coup, feeling like used tools that was thrown away. A few concessions to the other factions of the political sphere will help us ease the tensions within the party. Economic reforms. The biggest problem of our country right now is the everlasting economic crisis that has been gripping us ever since the 80s. With no sign of letting go anytime soon, Chairman Yevnov has to invent some new economy reforms so that his promised economic growth somehow happens, and his grip and credibility as chairman will firmly in place. Let's hope these so-called reforms at least work. Calming down the party factionalism. The Communist Party of the Soviet Union has been filled with factionalism, with politicians making decisions based on political thinking instead of the betterment of the nation. If the Soviet Union wants to claw back onto the world stage, we need to deal with this important internal issue without factionalism. The decision-making of the Union will become significantly easier. Address the party. The CPSU has many issues, perhaps even too many to list, but there are a few key ones that always seem to come up to the surface at every Congress. Corruption and lack of stability and deviations from Marxism, Leninism, lack of reforms, etc. Yenev has to address these problems one way or another, and the time when they could have been swept under the rug no longer exists. Now it only remains to be seen which faction will get the most out of him. Defunding the military. In these dire times, we need to defund a sector of our economy to have more money to spare. And after a detailed analysis, we had discovered that the military budget has been very high ever since the coup. So we decided to defund the military and direct these funds elsewhere. We're of course aware that this will anger the militaries very much, but some unpleasant things have to be done in order to improve the situation. Working around the clock. The USSR's economy is currently in its weakest position. We need to solve this issue immediately. The workforce of the Union shall work harder and no longer for the betterment of the country and its industry. In these times, we do not need professionalized equipment, but rather more equipment to ensure each and every soldier has the means to protect the Union from its enemies. This isn't working. This is bad. For almost a decade, Yenenev has tried again and again to keep the country afloat. And while he has managed to stop it from collapsing, we cannot say the future looks bright. Economic and political and ideological problems have finally caught up with him, and it seems like to be in no position to deal with them anymore. The Union's eyes has been pointed in his direction, and he has to finally admit that he is not a man fit for his role anymore. A change is needed in the leadership. Yenev's resignation. In 1991, Gennady Yenev took over the leadership of the Soviet Union in a coup d'etat in order to save our motherland from those who wanted to destroy it and restore the capitalist order. But ever since those fateful days of late August, his promises have failed and the economic growth never came. The people of the Baltics continue to resist, and we still remain in the shadow of our former selves. This country needs a fresh start. If Gennady Yenev loves the country, he knows what he has to do. A party congress. The 30th Congress of the CPSU is looking to be a decisive one. Now that Chairman Yelenov has announced his resignation, now sadly every faction within the party will begin to fight against each other without Yelenev's authority to calm the water. But despite that, we will need to take this opportunity to set a new course for our nation that will bring us back to the top of the world where we belong. If this will happen, it is unknown. But one thing is certain, during this Congress, the Union's fate will be chosen. Putin should win. The KGB is the highest. Pardon me. It has been several days since Yenev resigned as the General Secretary, and the party congress has begun. Tensions in the hall were high as many just waited for the opportunity to grab the position of the most powerful man in the USSR. Many backstabs and shady actions have been going on far from the public's eyes and ears. However, this long meeting has come to an end. And as the speaker walked to the microphone at the main stand and the final voting began, the next leader of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics is Vladimir Putin, the problem solver. Vladimir Putin has been the head of the KGB since Kirkyov's retirement in 1997, but even before that he was an influential figure in the agency for many reasons. The main one being that he was always the man who would be called to solve the problems. This type of job has given him the pure hate for the reformists and the liberal cliques in the party, who were targeted most of the time. Still, his reputation as one of the most capable men for the job, who devoted himself to the orders and Soviet apparatus, must not be entirely true, as he is well known to be one of the most corrupt members of the said apparatus. The road to the top has not been the cleanest one, but there's still a way to go. A new Soviet era. A new era for our Union has begun, led by the famous and well-known KGB Sergeant Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Putin is well known among the republics of our Union, especially for the position he held and for the operations he completed. And he is also known among the population because of his conservative ideals and the move towards an authoritarian and protective union towards its people. From what it seemed like the end of our days, it was just a beginning for a new era for our motherland. At the helm, a capable man of governing firmly, respected and especially loyal to his ideals for which our homeland stands. Promise nomenclature stability. With the formation of the new government, our union lacks the stability which is necessary to guarantee the security for the people. Therefore, the Secretary General decided to give a speech to the nation promising nomenclature stability. After the speech, it is hoped that the people will understand the good intentions of our new leader and will trust us. Appoint Petrushka as KGB director. Our union to live needs stability more than blind loyalty. What we saw was about to happen in the infamous summer of 1991, days when our beloved USSR was in a coffin, but thank God it got out. Now, the man who can guarantee us stability is Nikolai Patrushev. Patrushev, thanks to his pragmatic approach, is the only one capable of guaranteeing giving stability to our union, and at the same time keeping it away from prying eyes and effectively managing the KGB. Bribe party members. Our union, however beautiful and anti-imperialist, is not perfect, and we know well among our ranks there are many people who would sell themselves for a few rubles to the first one who passes by, and this, for our internal stability, is not a good one at all. But Patrushev suggested these party members would likely sell themselves to the first person who comes by, so what's stopping us from buying them first? Concede to certain nationalist demand, the nationalists who oppose Pole to what we communists represent, both in words, symbol, and actions, but in our republics, especially in Russia, there are many such groups which are supported by the people, and therefore we could turn our back on Lenin for this time. After all, it's for the sake of stability in it. Prioritize the Russian SSR. The Russian SSR, this republic is its heart of the entire Union, not to mention the culture, and also the largest republic, comprising about 70% of our territory. Therefore, according to many members of the party and the General Secretary himself, it should be prioritized over the others. In all respects, starting from the simple construction of infrastructure and factories to the expansion ladder and of urban centers. Stability at last. As promised by our Secretary General Putin, the Union has come to a fair amount of internal stability again, which allow us to operate at the best of our abilities, both in diplomatic actions with foreign countries and especially with our people. For the umpteenth time, after complications and problems, our Union manages to see another day, this time strongly supported by its people and a couple of bucks. Putin's speech. Secretary General Putin is ready to give a speech to our people touching on various topics from the red glorious days of the revolution. I rekindle the old patriotic flame in the hearts of our fathers, and kindle new ones in the hearts of our youth. But importantly, the discussion will focus on the actions that were carried out by the government, and therefore by Putin himself, and how the actions taken by the Secretary General have raised the country from the brink of the grave, bringing it back on its feet. Denounced the GKCHP. The State of Emergency Committee, the GKCHP, is nothing more than a group of opportunists, traitors, and scoundrels who have made the sad days of our motherland the lottery for power. Their group has nothing that matches our ideals or what the Union exists. It is wholly made up for those who've carved power. In fact, it is not made up of opportunists, but also traitors. For that matter, they have no legitimate claim on their actions for what happened in August, and this makes them coup plotters in every way. It's time to end it. Once and for all, Comrade Putin in the next few days will publicly denounce the GKCHP and all its members who were part of it. May such an event never happen again. Incriminate Yazov. Dmitry Yazov, the only high-ranking general from Siberia that the USSR has ever had, and one man who participated in the August coup. Even though he is in all respects a coup plotter and a traitor, the people don't seem to care. All too respected among the army, and all too loved among the people, making him one of Putin's main political enemies. By blaming him for everything bad that our Union has been through, and with a little behind-the-scenes deals, and the old marshal will be reduced to a Siberian snowdrift. Remove disloyal generals. Yazov is a respected man in the army, far too respected for his own good. In fact, in the ranks of our army, loyalty is more to the Marshal Yazov than it is to the General Secretary Putin, making part of our army prone to possible mass rebellion if we were to give Yazov too much freedom, and making him one of the most dangerous political figures in the entire USSR. To weaken him and rid ourselves of his influence among the members of our army, the first step to take is to get rid of his lackey generals. Once this is done, the soldiers will be more inclined to be on our side, even if part of our army will suffer as a result of the purchase. Ashes to ashes. The old and beloved Marshal is now just an old man. In fact, after publicly indicating him and getting rid of his miserable lackeys, the poor old bastard remained completely isolated and alone, giving us the chance to take him out of action without raising a fuss. With him out of the way, our General Secretary will be the single most beloved man in the whole USSR. Release Gorbachev. Mikhail Gorbachev, to be precise, is a man who almost destroyed 60 years of Russian and European history, almost causing the entire Soviet Union to collapse. Currently, he is being held under house arrest for crimes against the state, but the Secretary General has decided to offer him a pardon and release him. Calling old friends. We all know the Secretary General's old job, that being a former KGB sergeant, even through the several years have passed since his retirement from the Secret Service. Putin still has contact with many of his old friends who work there. In this way, a simple call gives us an advantage over each of our enemies, so that we could come to know each of their sins and use this to our advantage. General Secretary Putin. In a short time, our new General Secretary became the most reliable man in the entire Soviet Union, kept his promises to ensure stability, got rid of traitors and opportunists who wanted nothing more to satiate their thirst for power. On top of that, with the fall of his political rival, Putin has absolute domination over the entire Union, from popular support to total loyalty of the armed forces. And let's not forget to mention his absolute dominance over the entire KGB and his most loyal allies in the Soviet people. It seems that our Union has finally reached the point of forgetting those bad summer days and starting a new path of strength to redeem itself from those who have hurt it in the past. Opening up the political sphere. Our political sphere itself is too closed in on itself, and this is good for the stability of the country since no one has the right to attack us, but on the other hand, the people are not happy at all and live in a state of political oppression. By expanding our political vision, by allowing more parties freedom, the people will be happier for the sake of stability. Silence opposition once and for all. Opposition here, protests there. Don't these damned brainless people understand that the General Secretary Putin is the only man who can save the country and redeem our shame? Evidently, no. So it's time for them to shut their mouths and until they figure out who's in charge here, or have something intelligent to say instead of supporting our enemies and destabilizing our politics and poisoning the brains of our Soviet youth. Lift the ban on nationalist parties. Part of the population living in the Soviet Union, especially in the Ukrainian and Russian SSR, are nationalists, and to make them happy with our administration, the government decided to lift the ban on nationalist parties, limiting the radical ones. Increase the General Secretary's power. From virtually the founding of our Union in 1923, our ranks have teemed with traitors waiting for the moment in the sun to strip the country of its future. So to prevent these bastards from fulfilling their materialistic and selfish and twisted dreams, it was decided that the General Secretary should have more power over his subordinate, so as to control them like the puppets they are. In order to ease our limitations on our political sphere, an obligatory thing to do is relax the pressure that our government puts on the press, thus allowing them to express their opinions on the administration, but always with some limitations. Favor the Russian parties. If we want to guarantee a future for our country, even controlled by the nationalists, we must favor Russian parties, largely limiting the influence of the rival SSSRs to the Russian one, especially Ukraine and its bitterest threat. Our best ally in this case is Vladimir Zinskikovsky, a well-known Russian nationalist popular among the population. Lessen party requirements. The party, the brain of the Union, is largely made up of old politicians whose methods are no longer helpful in these modern times to ensure our country's future. Their methods are too far outdated, and the Soviet people are tired of the same unfulfilled promises and the same faces appearing on television to solve or at least improve the problem. We have lowered the requirements necessary to join the party so more capable youth can start a career and make themselves useful to us, to the party, and the Union. The New Guard. The majority of our senior officers working in the USSR are old loyalists, namely during the GKCHP period. And this is not good for us at all. In fact, the old guard will do their best to stop our plans of our wise Putin. If the latter go against their senseless ideals, the General Secretary will avoid other internal conflict, decided to reshuffle the old guard with more young, competent, and loyal officers to our cause. Contact Dugin. The Secretary General cannot think of every single political reform in the country, therefore his best ally in this case is the well-known Eurasianist political philosopher Alexander Dugin, who, although nationalist and a supporter of the National Bolsheviks, his great intelligence and knowledge of the political philosophical texts that can help us in drafting the new constitution and other reforms. promised change. The Soviet people are tired of seeing the same thieves politicians that in their broken promises, tired of seeing the same faces telling lies on televisions to thousands of people, tired of living in the state of oppression in a country like ours. Who can solve these problems? General Secretary Putin, of course. The man who became the most respected man in the entire Soviet Union within a short time of his first term, and also the man who defended the Soviet people by being the director of the KGB. Putin, to calm things down, will give a speech promising the people the change they so desire, and obviously to them, give it to them, right? Adopt limited market socialism. The planned system was a mistake, a big one at that. And this another mistake that Putin will have to fix. And to do so, we will endorse one of the reformist doctrine that our Chinese friends have already endorsed, namely the limited socialist market. By doing this, our economy will be affected better, and by opening our market even partially, many more nations will be happy to make contacts with us, and we will be able to expand our influence. A new Soviet constitution. Putin saved the Soviet Union, making it advanced on many points of view, especially the political one, reforming the country and making it more modern, removing some of the pressure on the press, and guaranteeing political freedom. Now, after having contacted Dugin, Putin is ready, together with the rest of the government, to draft a new Soviet constitution that will be loyal to the Soviet ideal and more modern, in order to be embraced by every proud Soviet citizen. An air of stability. Since Putin has been in the government, many things have changed. The Union has become increasingly stronger, such as the selection of the director of the KGB, the plans for reorganization, the public announcement of the GKCHP, and finally the internal politics reforms of our country. Already drafted constitution, Putin, in a couple years government, has managed to start two very important areas in modern Soviet history. A new era of stability, and now our task, if we hadn't understood it all, set out towards our future, giving all our trust to Putin. He has done a lot for us in this little time, and for sure he will lead us to our great win against our enemies. Stomp the separatists. Despite the years of destroying the separatist and reactionary elements in the Union, there are still people who oppose the Soviet future and prosperity of our people. We will strike down these fascists of the 21st century right back to the grave they crawled out of. Crush the Lithuanian resistance. Baltic people have always been a thorn in the side of the old mother Soviets, and although two of the Baltic republics have seceded from us, a third, Lithuania, remains strongly rebellious against our rule. If this wasn't already enough, they have the ugliest disease that a Soviet citizen could ever see alive, nationalism. In order to prevent this disease from spreading even further among our republics, we have decided to increase the Soviet forces in the Lithuanian territory, proceeded with a national crackdown. Those rebels won't even understand what hit them. Secure Ukraine. Among the children of the USSR, the most rebellious one is certainly Ukraine, and today, incessantly, it continues to give our Union a hard time. Just like the majority of the integrated republics that oppose us, the majority of the rebels are nationalists. For the Ukrainian Banderists, to prevent the situation in the Ukrainian SSSR from continuing to worsen, we have decided to send a massive deployment of units in the region to stop any rebel attempts to do damage to the stability of our Union. Okay, and with that done, into the mountains. The group of rebels who, to be correct, should be called terrorists. These people who live in Chechnya, a republic in the USSR, although insignificant, it proves to be a real problem in a large country like ours. The Chechen rebels are the fiercest of all enemies in our new old Soviet Union, driven by a strong Islamic belief and total disregard for civilian casualties. In order for these animals to stop torturing the city of Grozny, the Caucasus Republic, and adjacent to them, they must be destroyed, like our wise marshal decided. There, that's done. Prepare for future resistance. As in the old days, all our enemies have collapsed under our boot. Lithuanian nationalists, Ukrainian banderists, and Chechen zealots, all of them at the feet of the USSR. In order to prevent our country from having to spend significant time ridding itself of the scum, it was decided to increase the spending on the Secret Service, especially the KGB, so that these anti-proletarian terrorist cells die even before they can develop on our soil. The little traitors Estonia, Latvia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia left the Union during the chaos of the 90s. Their leaders ruled their countries against the will of their people, murdering and arresting and expelling anyone who doesn't agree with their democracy. The time has come that we finally start our campaign to reintegrate these traitors, preparing their fate. They have foolishly rejected our generous offer of reunification with the motherland. We will have to use our last resort option, ground invasion of these rebellious states. Under old management, we have tried our best to negotiate with these rebelling states to peacefully reunite with the motherland so we can live in harmony and peace again. They did not like the idea of that. They have rejected all our proposals with strongly worded letters directed at Moscow. If they only understand us when we come knocking at the gates with their tanks, then so be it. Alright, and here we go. Time for the sped up board for the... Yeah, no one's gonna miss these cities. Yeah, the caucus is gonna feel what I'm gonna do. And there they go. Alright, and there Armenia goes. And there the Soviet Union is reunited. The 31st Party Congress. The time has come for the 31st Congress to take place and decide the course of action the Union will take. Representatives will be elected, decisions will be made, the Union's future will be decided. Okay, before the last day of the focus, I am gonna leave it off here, so stay alright. Bye.